This is the brand new Nike Air Max 1000, and it really seems like the future of footwear. I don't know if I've ever been this excited to review a brand new Nike sneaker. I love Nike, but this shoe is something else. So obviously, as you can probably tell from looking at it, this shoe is not like other Nike sneakers. It's fully 3D printed, except for the air bubble. Over the last 5 to 10 years, other brands have ventured into the 3D printed footwear market. We've got Adidas with 4D, we've got Puma with whatever the shoe is. ASICS has 3D printed slides, and even Under Armour has taken a crack at it. But this is the first time that I know of that Nike has released a fully 3D printed shoe. And in some ways, this shoe is leaps and bounds ahead of most of the other 3D printed footwear on the market. So while the Nike Air Max 1000 is technically a Nike sneaker, it's manufactured by a brand called Zellerfeld. Zellerfeld is a company that was founded back in 2016, and their goal is to put a 3D printed shoe on every foot. They're essentially the largest 3D printed footwear manufacturer, and they've created shoes for people like Kanye West, Heron Preston, and many other designer shoes which you probably have seen before. In fact, here's another pair of sneakers that I've been wearing a bunch, manufactured by Zellerfeld, called the Camus Hezi. And actually, not to totally self-promote here, but my brand APTHCRY is releasing our own shoe with Zellerfeld, the APTHCRY shoe. We're not totally sure exactly what it's going to look like yet, but you guys can follow the design process on my channel. Check out the video linked at the top of the screen. I'm having an absolute blast showing the ins and outs of creating my own sneaker with Zellerfeld. And what I think is really cool about this series is that it's happening in real time, so you guys actually have a say in the design of the shoe. We're literally reading all of the comments on those videos, taking your guys' design advice, taking your opinions into consideration so that the shoe is something that we've both designed together. It's a collaborative effort, and it's gonna be awesome, so check it out. So I say all that to say this: the Nike Air Max 1000 might be the first fully 3D printed shoe from Nike, but it's not Zellerfeld's first rodeo, which is a good thing because they've already worked out a bunch of the kinks over the last almost 10 years. And because of that, the Nike Air Max 1000 is not only a very wearable pair of sneakers, but it's very comfortable and it's incredibly durable. The first Air Max, obviously, but also the first shoe with visible air. It's a pair of sneakers that's not only iconic, but comfortable. So because Nike wanted to pull from their heritage, the design of this sneaker is heavily inspired by the Nike Air Max 1, but it's obviously also pretty futuristic. Not only that, it's the first 3D printed shoe with an air bubble. So because this is such a wild and new sneaker, it's not really like anything else that we've seen before from Nike. I asked you guys on social media if you had any questions that I could answer in this review. And after flying out to Las Vegas to be at the launch event for this shoe and wearing this sneaker for a while, I feel like I've got some good answers for it. So the first question is from Kari, a fellow YouTuber at A Sneaker Fetish. How much will it be? So this shoe was actually completely free. Well, not for me because I had to pay resale for it, but it was free. So the Nike Air Max 1000 at launch is completely free. But unfortunately, as you probably guessed, it's not as simple as that. So the Nike Air Max 1000 launched officially at ComplexCon Las Vegas this past weekend, and there's only around 1,200 pairs. And of course, because it was a Las Vegas launch event, the only way to get a pair of these sneakers was to win it through a Nike slot machine. There was no way to buy it. Even me, as someone who was invited out to the event, I didn't get a pair. Literally, the only way to get a pair was to win it. And I unfortunately didn't win it. And you might be saying to yourself, well then how do you have a pair? Well, I bought it for resale. It was a lie. But shout out to Sup Paso LLC on Instagram because he actually gave me a really good deal and he shipped them overnight. So if it wasn't for him, this review would not be happening. But still, even that is not the full story because the only way you could actually walk away with the pair at ComplexCon was to hit a triple jackpot. So from the rumblings that I was hearing around the event, there was like 100 to 150 pairs actually available there at ComplexCon. But like I mentioned a couple minutes ago, there was 1,200 pairs available total, and that's because the other around 1,000 pairs was available if you hit a single jackpot. You would just have to wait 6 months for them to be 3D printed and sent to you. And a lot of people won those, like 1,000 people won those. Hess Kicks won a pair, Elliot Page won a pair. I did it twice and I couldn't win a pair. You're not supposed to do it twice, but I used 2 different Nike accounts. I shouldn't admit that because Nike could be watching this video. Listen, Nike, I'm sorry, but I tried. That being said, the event itself was actually really cool because not only did they have the slot machines where you could win the sneakers for absolutely free, they also had this whole behind the design section of the display which showed you how the shoes were made. They had live 3D printers going and printing sneakers at the event floor, and they of course had design sketches of the shoe and prototypes and things like that. It was a really, really cool thing to see if you were at ComplexCon. And in the next sneaker design video, which I mentioned earlier, I'm going to cover the entire event, so if you guys want to stay tuned for that, hit that subscribe button, follow the playlist link in the description below. That being said, as of right now, there is no way to buy this sneaker. Obviously, neither Zellerfeld or Nike could tell me anything about the potential of this shoe releasing in the future. I don't know if there will be or will not be pairs of these actually released to the public. I really couldn't tell you. I genuinely do not know. But I think if they ever do release to the public, which I feel like is a 50-50 thing, I wouldn't be surprised either way if they did or if they didn't. I'm guessing that the retail price of this shoe would be similar to other Zellerfeld sneakers, which is between like $200 to $300 depending on the shoe. In some cases it's lower at like $150, but those are more like slides and clogs. Because this is an official Nike sneaker with an air bubble, I'm assuming it's going to be on the more high end of that. Leomo714 on YouTube asks, how's sizing? Will there be half sizes? That's a really great question, and it's one with not one exact answer. So if you got a pair of shoes, it was already pre-printed at the event, or maybe you bought a pair for resale online, unfortunately, there's only full sizes. I grabbed a size 9, which is my true size, and generally I would say that it fits true to size. However, because the shoe wasn't specifically made for me, unfortunately, it's a little bit snug. Now, that's not usually the case with Zellerfeld, because usually when you buy a pair of sneakers from Zellerfeld, they have you scan your feet and they adjust the 3D based on your exact foot shape so it fits you perfectly. And that's the experience that I've had with all of my other Zellerfeld sneakers. They've all fit great, they've all fit true to size. However, when it comes to this shoe, because it was pre-printed for the event, it's a little snug. Now, the good news is, for the people who won pairs on the slot machine who had them shipped to their house, they're able to scan their foot on the Zellerfeld app and get a shoe that's perfectly matched to their foot. So their Nike Air Max 1000 should fit them perfectly. But in my case, because I paid resale, and for any of you guys out there who pay resale, you can't guarantee that the shoe is going to fit your foot perfectly. So I would say go true to size, but if you have wider feet, maybe go up half a size, because unfortunately you don't know what the person's foot was like that you're buying the shoe from. So I don't really have a solid answer for you, but what I will say is that if you won a pair of sneakers from the slot machine and you were able to scan your foot, it should fit true to size. And maybe if Nike releases a sneaker online in the future and you're able to scan your foot, it should fit true to size. But for anyone buying the shoe for resale, it may not fit you perfectly, but I would still suggest going true to size. It worked out for me. I think it's going to work out for most people unless you have super wide feet. And then again, maybe go up a full size or a half size if you can, just to make sure that you're getting a shoe that you can actually get your foot into. But generally, you should be good if they release a sneaker, is my answer. And fit actually leads me into comfort, and surprisingly, the Nike Air Max 1000 is very comfortable on feet. Now, if you've seen any of my other 3D printed shoe videos where I personally 3D print the shoes, they never feel good. And that's because the material that I have and the printers that I have suck. All right, they don't suck, but they're not purpose-made for 3D printing shoes. Zellerfeld actually created their own 3D printers that are proprietary that allow them to actually 3D print shoes that are comfortable on foot. Not only that, the material they use, this TPU style material, I think it is actually TPU, is very, very soft and very squishy. And I had a couple people ask, what does it feel like compared to some other shoes? And I totally understand that question because it's not like a standard pair of shoes. So I wear tested it alongside some other shoes so I can give you guys a general idea of how it'll feel on foot. So obviously, because it is a Nike Air Max, I had to compare it to the Air Max 186, the newest version of the Nike Air Max, and I've got to say, it definitely feels softer underfoot. Now, the upper doesn't really feel like a traditional sneaker upper because it's a TPU rubbery-like material versus a more traditional fabric mesh material, but it still feels really good. You still get a lot of flexibility. It's not as breathable. I mean, this shoe isn't really that breathable either, but it still feels good on foot, and underfoot, it's very, very soft. And what's really cool about Zellerfeld 3D printed shoes is that although this shoe is printed in one material, you can actually change up the way that you print that material to change up the way that the shoe feels in different parts of the shoe. So for example, the midsole of the shoe feels stiff from the outside, but inside, it's actually really, really soft. You've obviously got some textural differences on the bottom half of the shoe versus the top half of the shoe, and the top half of the shoe on the outside feels pretty solid. I mean, not like stiff or anything, but it feels more like a standard TPU-like material, but when you press on the inside, it feels like a foamy fabric. It's kind of wild, especially in this like center area in the middle of the tongue. It really feels like a very soft foam. So underfoot, I'm giving the edge to the Air Max 1000 versus the Air Max 1. When it comes to the upper, I think it depends on preference. So let's put this guy at the bottom of the list. Next up, we've got the Nike Invincible Run 3, a shoe that I've considered to be the softest underfoot shoe for years, up until this year when I think it was beaten by some other brand shoes like New Balance and also Adidas possibly. But the Nike Invincible Run 3 features ZoomX foam, which is incredibly soft and cushy underfoot. And comparing it to the Air Max 1000, as you probably could have guessed, it's not as soft. I mean, this shoe is very soft underfoot, but it's nowhere near as soft or as plush as ZoomX, which is no surprise. I just wanted to compare it to like one of the softest shoes out there. Plus the color was kind of similar, so I thought it would look cool. That's the reason I picked this shoe. Next up, we've got the Yeezy Foam Runner, which a lot of people were wondering if this shoe feels like a Yeezy Foam Runner. And surprisingly, that's not a bad comparison. Underfoot, the shoe is pretty similar. The bottom of the shoe is really stiff, but the top part of the shoe where your foot sits, it's actually very, very soft and very bouncy and springy. The Foam Runner is kind of the same softness all the way through, but your underfoot experience is actually pretty similar between the Nike Air Max 1000 and the Yeezy Foam Runners. The Yeezy Foam Runners are definitely a lighter shoe, and they have a lot more ventilation holes on the upper, so they're going to be probably a more summery type of shoe with a bit more flexibility. But overall, in terms of underfoot comfort, I kind of have to give these shoes a tie. Now, obviously, talking about the Yeezy Foam Runners, we've got to talk about the Yeezy Slides, and because these are such a soft, thick foam, I mean, they win. They're softer. Not as soft as the Invincible Run 3s, but they are definitely softer. The final shoe that I wanted to compare it to was another pair of Zellerfeld 3D printed shoes, and the reason I wanted to compare this shoe to this shoe is because although they're made of the same material, the Nike pair actually has an air unit in the heel. Now, interestingly, I actually think that the air unit in this shoe makes it not as soft in the heel area as a standard Zellerfeld shoe, and that's because the air unit just doesn't compress as much as the standard Zellerfeld shoe does. It's kind of wild to say, but I do think that the standard Zellerfeld sneaker is slightly softer underfoot than the Nike Air Max 1000. Now when it comes to the front half of the shoe, they do feel very similar, but when you get towards the heel, it's ever so slightly stiffer because you have to put a bit more weight on the air unit to sort of activate it versus the TPU or 3D printed material that you've got on the standard Zellerfeld shoe. So out of the 6 shoes that I've tested, sort of a range between incredibly soft underfoot to more of a standard feeling shoe, the Nike Air Max 1000 is kind of in the middle. And like I said, if I had to compare the feel of the shoe to another shoe that you guys might be familiar with, I think the foam runner is probably the closest thing. It doesn't feel exactly the same, but it feels the most similar out of any other pair of shoes that I have. Next, I want to go over the visual design of the shoe. And I've got to say, for a pair of sneakers that comes in all one color, made of all one material, it actually looks great. So like I said before, the design of the shoe is inspired by the classic Air Max 1. And my favorite part of the entire design is actually this speed line that runs down the side of the shoe, or this parting line that sort of mimics the shape of the classic mudguard on the Air Max 1. Now, unlike the Air Max 1, which is just a material sewn on top of another material, on this shoe it kind of comes off the side of the sneaker and it's got this really cool sort of 3D wave effect. And I love the way that it allows shadows to create new shapes and new forms on the shoe. It's such a cool detail. I also really love the textural differences on this shoe, which we've already sort of talked about a bit. But the top half of the shoe comes with this very, very smooth material that features this sort of inset Nike logo towards the midfoot. And the bottom half of the shoe comes with this much rougher but really, really interesting looking 3D printed material, which again is the same material but printed in a different way. It really gives a lot of life to this shoe, and I love the way it looks. Another detail that I like, which I didn't think I was going to like, is this lace area. So on the standard Air Max 1, you've got laces, like most Nike Air Maxes have. But of course, because this 3D printed shoe doesn't have laces, they had to go for a slightly different approach, like sort of a more slip-on approach. And what they've done on this shoe is mimic the shape of the Air Max 1 eye stay, and then create a different texture inside of the area where the tongue would be, which is actually very soft and foamy feeling compared to the other smooth part of the upper, and it actually makes it feel like you've got this sort of puffy tongue on top of your foot. It's kind of a wild experience. Of course, you've got the Nike logo towards the bottom of this tongue area, and then continuing back on the shoe towards the heel, this parting line continues around the back of the shoe and creates almost this fin shape. And then on the actual heel of the shoe, you've got the Air text in 3D sort of coming off the back of the shoe. Seriously, I love this design. I think it's so sick. And personally, while I think some of the other colors that they're releasing with this shoe or that have released with this shoe are cool, like the black color, which comes with the green air bubble, which actually looks awesome, the blue color or the white color, my favorite is the red color, not only because it's seemingly the hero color of this release, but also because when I think of an Air Max 1, I think of that red colorway, that first red colorway. And so this kind of reminds me of that, and I love the way it looks. Moving inside the sneaker, you've got that same sort of foamy texture that I mentioned earlier that's in the tongue area of the shoe. On one side of the inside, you've got the Zellerfeld logo and made in Germany, and then on the other side, you've got the size of the sneaker. In this case, it's a men's 9. Then moving down on the sneaker, the same sort of rough texture continues down onto the midsole of the shoe. There isn't really a defined midsole. You've got another sort of speed or parting line there, which I guess cuts out the shape of the midsole, but it's all the same material. And then of course you've got the air unit in the heel, which is so wild because when was the last time you ever saw an air unit in a 3D printed shoe? Never, because I've never done it before. So from what I can tell, the air unit is actually inserted after the shoe is fully 3D printed. So they 3D print the shoe first, they pop the air unit in, and then it kind of just sticks in there. I don't know if it is able to be removed. It kind of looks like there's like some nubs in there that kind of hold it in place. But I'm sure if you tried hard enough, you could pop it out. On this red colorway, the air unit comes in a clear plastic. You've got Air Max 1000 printed on the lateral side. And then on the medial side, also printed on the air unit, you've got the words Future and Bowerman. Now, from what I can tell, the only colorway of this shoe that features a different colored air unit is the black colorway, which comes with the green air unit, which I actually think looks really, really sick. However, for me, the red colorway is the way to go. I don't mind that it's just a plain white air unit. I think it's sick regardless. I think the fact that there's an air unit in a 3D printed shoe in and of itself is crazy, so I'm all about it. And then moving to the bottom of the shoe, they've replicated the Air Max 1's traction pattern. Of course, different parts of the outsole are printed in different textures to create sort of an illusion of different materials. It's a very cool look. And so far wearing this shoe, it's been very grippy. And one thing I've noticed with some of my other Zellerfeld sneakers that I've had that I've worn for years, they're incredibly durable, like weirdly durable. I don't know why they're so durable. It's kind of like the foam runners, which is a shoe which shouldn't last as long as it does, but it lasts for years. Same thing with Zellerfeld manufactured shoes. I think just the TPU that they're using is just incredibly durable, and it doesn't really fall apart, which I saw a question asking that. Do these shoes fall apart? From my experience, they never have, and I've worn these pairs for years. Not this pair in particular, but like I said, it's the same material that you've got on other Zellerfeld sneakers, so I wouldn't worry about durability. In fact, this shoe's kind of a tank. It's aggressively durable. It's kind of wild. One thing I did want to mention as well is that the outsole, the way that it's printed, it's actually really stiff. It feels like a real rubber outsole, but then when you move up on the shoe, the top half of the shoe is like very squishy and soft. It's crazy how one material can have this many different feels and textures and strengths. It's kind of wild. Another question that I got from Jason on YouTube was, how biodegradable is this? Is this part of Nike's move to zero emissions approach, or is this just a step in the opposite direction? And that's actually a really great question. And one of the reasons that I really love 3D printed shoes, at least FDM, TPU style 3D printed shoes, is that this material is recyclable. Resin-based 3D printers can actually be kind of toxic, and even the manufacturing process is kind of toxic. And if you're not familiar with what a resin-based 3D printer is, it basically is exactly what it sounds like. It prints an object in resin and slowly pulls it out of the resin. Whereas with FDM printers, which almost act as like a regular printer, except rather than printing different lines on a page, you're just printing on top of each other. These printers tend to use more TPU style materials like the materials that Zellerfeld uses, and they can actually be recycled. While this material isn't biodegradable, it can be broken down and reused. I think they do actually make some biodegradable filaments. I don't think they're as good as regular filament. I think they break down very easily, but it is an option specifically for this printing style, FDM printing. And actually most of the other shoes that are out there are resin-based 3D printed shoes, like the 4D sneakers, the recent Climate Cool shoe that just dropped, the Pumas that just dropped. And while sure, you can get a slightly higher resolution print, they're more expensive, they're a little bit more toxic, they don't feel as good on foot, they're not as soft as FDM. All around, I just prefer this style of printing, and I think that's why Zellerfeld is doing so well, because they're able to manufacture shoes a little bit faster, they're cheaper, and they're recyclable. Oh, one other question I got from Geo is, can you say it's water resistant at least? Yes, it is absolutely water resistant. I wore this in the rain, as you can see in all these B-roll shots, and my foot was completely dry. Well, at least the part that was in the shoe. I might be biased because I love 3D printed footwear and I'm creating my own 3D printed shoe, but I genuinely think that the Nike Air Max 1000 is probably the most exciting pair of sneakers that I've had my hands on all year. It is truly different from any other pair of hyped up sneakers that I've reviewed all year, and I'm genuinely stoked about it because I do think that 3D printed footwear is gonna create a huge shift in the market. I don't think every pair of shoes that everyone's gonna wear ever is gonna be 3D printed, but I do think in the next 5 or 10 years, 3D printed footwear is gonna become incredibly common. And the potential for 3D printed footwear is limitless because all you need to do is come up with a 3D file and have it printed. And there you go. You can change the design, you can modify it between iterations, you can print as many as you want or as little as you want. And the fact that you can actually wear 3D printed shoes now from a big brand like Nike, and it lasts and it feels good and it's comfortable on foot, is pretty incredible. But my plan is to wear this shoe non-stop for the next week or 2 weeks or maybe a month, I'm not totally sure, and give you guys an update video and let you know what my experience has been like in this shoe after wearing it non-stop. So if you guys want to see that video, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And also, if you guys want to see this shoe re-released from Nike, let Nike know. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I don't know if they've got it coming out. I don't know if they don't have it coming out, but I would love to see Nike produce more 3D printed footwear because I genuinely do think it's crazy cool. So let Nike know. Subscribe to the videos if you guys haven't yet. Check out the series where I design my own 3D printed footwear, linked in the top of the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.